The initial chapter delves into the Great Molasses Flood of January 15, 1919, in Boston. The catastrophe originated at the Purity Distilling Company, where millions of gallons of molasses were undergoing fermentation to produce ethanol for alcoholic beverages. Unusually warm winter temperatures, reaching 40 degrees Fahrenheit, led to a rupture in a 50-foot-tall tank containing up to 2.3 million gallons of molasses due to increased pressure. This unleashed a 25-foot-high wave of molasses, flooding Boston's North End neighborhood, causing injuries to 150 individuals and claiming the lives of 21. Described in a contemporaneous Boston Post report, the streets were submerged in waist-deep molasses, with a chaotic scene of struggling forms, both animal and human. The disaster, while devastating in the short term, paved the way for crucial regulations and precedents related to building codes, municipal oversight, and corporate liability, according to Sandler. The narrative then shifts to the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which granted women the right to vote. Initially proposed in 1878, the amendment faced obstacles in gaining congressional and executive support until 1919, when suffragists pressured President Woodrow Wilson to convene a special congressional session. Despite passing both the House of Representatives and the Senate by June, it took over a year for the required 36 states to ratify it. Several states, including Alabama, North and South Carolina, Virginia and West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, resisted ratification. The discussion on suffrage highlights the historical context, emphasizing that the United States formally denied women the right to vote in any state or federal election since 1807. The shifting public attitudes toward women's suffrage, influenced in part by women's contributions during World War I, played a crucial role. The argument arose that it was hypocritical for the U.S. to champion democracy abroad while denying its own citizens democratic rights at home. Additionally, the narrative touches upon the Red Summer of 1919, marked by widespread anti-black white supremacist violence, particularly fueled by the return of African American veterans from World War I, escalating racial tensions across the nation. These circumstances were exacerbated by an economic downturn and heightened competition for employment among white Americans, European immigrant Americans, and African Americans. In over 30 cities, white individuals carried out acts of terrorism against African Americans, resulting in lynching-related murders and extensive property damage. The most egregious incident occurred in Elaine, Arkansas, where the town's sheriff mobilized a posse to suppress an imagined black insurrection, ultimately evolving into a lynch mob comprising over 500 people. Between September 30 and October 1, an estimated 237 African Americans and 5 whites lost their lives. The year 1919 also witnessed the emergence of fervent anti-communist sentiment, historically referred to as the First Red Scare. Following the hypernationalist movements of World War I and the rise of Marxist Bolshevists during the 1917 Russian Revolution, a considerable number of Americans grew apprehensive about the potential rise of communism and anarchism in the United States. Under the controversial Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer, the U.S. government engaged in unlawful search and seizures, extralegal arrests, and deportations, particularly targeting European immigrants suspected of involvement in communism or anarchism. This movement carried a strong anti-immigrant undertone, fueled by economic pressures and intensified job competition between European immigrants and native-born Americans. These economic strains resulted in widespread labor unrest in 1919, epitomized by the extensive steel strike. Under the pretext of the Red Scare, authorities began a crackdown on local and national labor unions, notably the Amalgamated Association of Iron, Steel, and Tin Workers, AA. In response, the unions organized nationwide strikes. Some confrontations between strikebreakers and unionists escalated to such an extent that in places like Gary, Indiana, the U.S. Army took control of the city and declared martial law. By early 1920, the demoralized unionists experienced a setback, with virtually no labor organizing occurring in the steel industry for roughly the next 15 years. Finally, the book explores the onset of Prohibition. While the 18th Amendment, prohibiting the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages, wasn't ratified until 1920, state legislatures had been shutting down brewing industries across the country over the preceding 3 years. Sandler attributes this largely to the diminished influence of German communities that had operated these industries in the aftermath of World War I. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.